Howdy do, everyone. Welcome to the Sons of History podcast. I'm Dustin Bass.
And I'm Alan Wakim.
I was about to introduce you. I was going to say, and that handsome man over on the other camera is Alan Wakim. Stunning, stellar, sophisticated. How are you, sir?
Living the dream, son. Living the dream.
What dream would that be?
Nightmare.
That's what I was afraid of. I had a feeling you were going to say nightmare. Yeah, it's what we're all living right now. Man, I tell you what, this year can't end soon enough.
I know. Although I heard that they're thinking of extending December. So, for a 13th month, which I think would be just perfect.
I'm actually all for that, so that we can extend 2020 as long as you need to end whatever the hell is going on right now and start 2021 afresh. So 2020 was a 16-month year. It was really incredible. It was terrible, but we got through it. And I tell you what, January 1st, 2021, it was just it was really quite amazing.
Well, I'm waiting to see what's going to happen when Jupiter and Saturn converge. And I mean, is there going to be a Antichrist born? Hey, we might as well. It's been that.
It has been that kind of year.
Yeah.
Or maybe he's already born. He's just going to declare himself. Hello, everyone. You see the sign? Yeah. Could be.
What happens?
What Satan does. He steals everything from Jesus.
A month after December 21st, will be January 21st, the first full day of the new administration.
Yeah.
Could be. I wonder. Just a thought. I don't know. Well, anyway, that's just me. I'm digressing here.
Yeah, we always digress. Well, everyone, we hope that you had a great week last week. We hope that you enjoyed the podcast, whether you listened to it on your podcast or if you listened to it and watched it on YouTube. So that was good, and that's something that we are going to be doing from now here on out, is posting our podcast up on YouTube moving forward. So did you happen to watch yourself on YouTube from this past week's podcast?
Dude, I've been putting 12-hour days at work.
Okay, all right. I didn't phrase the question as, hey, why didn't you watch? Because I don't know. But why didn't you watch yourself on... Just answer the question. Don't give me this. I can't stand it when people do that. It's always a one-up. It's always a one-up. If you woke up at 7 a.m., somebody marches in and says, oh, yeah, I woke up at 6. And somebody else is going to march in and say, oh, yeah, I woke up at 4:30. I haven't slept in 48. So just get out of here.
I know what's going to happen. One-up. I'm going to say, no, I didn't. And then you're just going to unleash a torrent of these, well, why didn't you? I mean, what kind of a message are you sending? The message I'm sending.
Mechanism. I get you.
Yeah. Well, see, because I like playing chess, so I figured what you were gonna say ahead of the game. So
you were like, that question isn't really about that question.
Right. It's gonna lead into something. So,
God, I am a terrible person. I really am, and sometimes. I don't mean that like self-loathing. Like, I'm not one of the typical self-loathing white guys that runs around in the hemisphere here. I really am a terrible person, because Jared, I think, feels the same way. My business partner, he feels the same way. I think he thinks, like, when I ask him a question, it's really not about the question. It's something I'm about to come right at him. I really got to stop that. And I think it's my passive aggressiveness that has really usurped my ability to communicate with my fellow man.
Were you ever a reporter?
Yes.
There you go.
A journalist. There's the problem.
There you go. That explains it then.
Yeah, that's a real problem. Okay, let's move on. So we're going to be talking about a question that you have that you wanted to pose during this conversation, which is, did we actually win the Cold War?
Yes.
And we're going to talk about whether we did or not. Because
I know the answer to it, but
But before we get to the answer, book and movie recommendations. And I tell you what, people leave a lot of comments, and they really do enjoy our book and movie recommendations. I really think they're going to like ours this week. You've got 3, so I'll let you go ahead and get started.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to do a movie recommendation, although I did buy Gunfight at the OK Corral, which, by the way, if you go to the Sons of History, you will see the a visual history of the gunfight at the OK Corral. But
you mean the Facebook page?
On Facebook, yeah. Tombstone. Yeah, I watched Tombstone. I watched Wyatt Earp. Loved them both. I just purchased Gunfight at the OK Corral, which was filmed, I think, in the 50s, something. So I'm going to watch that. But anyway, okay. So the 3 books, because this has to do with the subject at hand.
Yeah.
All right. The first one is by Kenneth Lloyd Billingsley. It's called Hollywood Party. Now, what is this about, you ask? It's about how the Soviet Union and the communists seduced the American film industry in the 1930s and the 1940s. Have you heard of the Hollywood 10, the Hollywood Blacklist? That's what this is about. And we'll talk about some of the stuff in here. What happened really, it really did happen.
Right.
Okay, the next is called The Devil's Pleasure Palace by Michael Walsh. Now, this has to do with the Frankfurt
Is that
School.
about... Oh, okay. I thought that was your old college dorm. Okay.
No, I never lived in a college dorm.
Oh.
Although I did when I was at A&M.
Why would you ruin that joke?
Because I don't get it. I know what you're saying, but...
No, you get it.
But the Pleasure Palace...
You get it, you liar.
I think that's what they called my bedroom, but that's it.
See, that's what I was...
That's neither here nor there. But I didn't say that. I never lived in a dorm.
Okay, I hate this joke that I just did.
Yeah, it's not funny, but I appreciate the attempt.
I bet you people laughed.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. Anyway, okay, this is about the Frankfurt School, critical theory. So, or the cult of critical theory. So we will talk about that too.
Okay.
And finally, Roger Scruton, Fools, Frauds, and Firebrands.
Roger Scruton.
Thinkers of the New Left. And he asks the question, why did the humanities department always follow leftists? It's like, hey, let's listen to leftists and let's abide by what they have to say. And he addresses that, and he names names. He names names. I have a few myself, like Rousseau, which I do have.
McCarthyism in a book.
I do have a couple of copies of Rousseau. I like to look at the difference between Hobbes and Rousseau. There's kind of they kind of clash. A lot of communist thinking follows the Rousseau thinking. So,
right.
Anyway, so those are my 3 books, and
not
we'll
that
touch
there's
up.
anything wrong with listening to the left or leftists, but there's got to be some type of balance, and there's not in university.
That is correct. No, it's good to listen. I read some of these books. I've got the Communist Manifesto. I have Das Kapital. I have Mein Kampf. I've got Saul Alinsky. I like to read what the opposition. You have to read what the opposition thinks. I have all those guys.
Yeah.
I have quite a library.
Yeah, you got a library. Okay, Move on. All right, so here's my book and movie recommendation. My book recommendation is by a guy by the name of Graham Greene, and it is called The Quiet American. So, if you've never read this book or you never watched the movie with Michael Caine, it's a good story. It's a strange story, but it's in the era of the Vietnam War, sort of early in. CIA, British intelligence, they are really conflicting, and it really talks about the idea of the CIA trying to help the situation while at the same time making it worse. He really does make the CIA come out to be sort of a guy that is really naive or just wrong-headed. But it's a good book. It's a good story. And if you're looking for a a different type of spy novel that is a pretty quick read. The Quiet American by Graham Greene. Graham Greene is a British classic writer. He died some time back. Anyways, check that out. Now, my movie recommendation, I don't know if you've ever seen this movie, but it is one of my favorite movies. It is called The Third Man. Have you ever seen that?
No, I've never even heard of it.
The Third Man with Orson Welles. It was made, I think, in 1949.
Okay.
So it was shortly out after the end of World War II. Man, it has some really powerful lines. And speaking of lines, actually, it's based off of the story by our good friend Graham Greene. So it's, if you've never, honestly, dude, if you've never watched The Third Man, you really do have to. That's one of those movies that you really have to see. I think it's like a top 10 on AFI's top 100 movies. So
really, yeah, I've never
really
heard
good.
of it.
Top 10, top 20, somewhere in there. But it's a really good. And Orson Welles plays such a great villain. And it's Orson Welles and Joseph Cotten. So yeah, if you haven't watched it, check it out. Orson Welles, I think, also helped with the screenplay, adapting the screenplay. So
okay.
Yeah. All right. So let's get right to it, my friend, shall we?
Okay. All right.
Let's start a little early in the discussion of the threat of communism. That is, and then we're going to lead into the Cold War. But the early beginnings of communism. You want to touch on the French Revolution, things that were going on in Europe in the middle of the 19th century as well. Primarily, obviously, in France. That's where a lot of crap was going down.
Yeah, France and Germany, I mean, grateful for Germany. They gave us Nazism and communism, but
it's so ridiculous, man. Like when you look at it, Germany doesn't get the blame for communism. Like in just general conversation, it's always Russia. Or maybe China, but it's or maybe France, but it's never Germany.
Right.
It's like that's where the
Germany released a virus.
Yeah, warfare.
Germany. What they like France, and you know what? Let's talk about that because the French Revolution was we talked about comparing the American Revolution with the French Revolution and the Russian Revolution and the Spanish Revolution, or not the Spanish Civil War. And, we compared how the American Revolution dealt with, it was God-fearing men that tied it in with, religion and tied it in with capitalism and tied it in with freedom and all that. But you compare it to like what happened in France, what happened in the Russian revolutions. And those were communistic revolutions. The French Revolution was, and wow, I can't believe my heater just turned on. But yeah, the French Revolution, you had radicals that wanted something very similar to communism, and in 1848, you had revolutions throughout Europe that were trying to overthrow many of the aristocracies, the kingdoms. That was supported by the liberals, but ended in failure. But it helped Marx and Engels write the Communist Manifesto. It led to writing Das Kapital. And, I looked to see like how many volumes of works that those two had written. And there were quite a bit, more than just those two. They wrote quite a bit about, and including Lenin. Lenin also, those guys wrote a lot of volumes of books on how to deal with many, many topics, socialism, the economics, families, blah, blah, blah. But then, now the Russian Revolution, now here's where Germany kind of spread the virus. Lenin was held up in Switzerland. They put him in a train and dumped him in Russia, and he infected the country with communism.
I think what Churchill identified the train car as an obelisk in one of his writings, in one of his one of his descriptions. I don't know if it was an article or a letter that he wrote. Yeah, but very descriptive, very matter of fact.
I don't think Germany quite understands. I mean, to this day, the repercussions of that move, We're still feeling it to this day.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the things that once the Soviet Union was taken over, or once the Soviets took over Russia and it became the Soviet Union, there were a lot of men, Ho Chi Minh, Mao Zedong, they got their training in the new Soviet Union. Colonialism and imperialism equals capitalism. So if you want to get rid of colonialism and imperialism, you have to get rid of capitalism.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it was the basis of, obviously, the bourgeoisie versus the proletariat, or the proletariat versus the bourgeoisie, however you want to say it. I mean, and it was always strictly class warfare. That's the very beginning. I think that's the first line in the Communist Manifesto, is the history is strictly about class warfare.
Right. Okay, now let's touch on that later on when we're talking about what we're seeing today, because the bourgeois and the proletariat has been replaced. But now the key words that's used is the patriarchy, white privilege, colonialism, the colonialists, stuff like that. That's now the key word, because there's a form of deception that's being used today. Instead of using bourgeois and proletariat, they're using, the keywords that I just mentioned, the patriarchy and white privilege. So, okay, now the Frankfurt School and critical theory, which is what that devil's pleasure palace talks about.
Stupid.
They brought about critical theory, which is a form of nihilism. Just question everything, and it was, they fled Nazi Germany. They came into the United States, and they started spreading their seeds of communism all over academia. I mean, all over academia. They took over slowly, not announcing it like, "Hey, this is what we're going to do." But what they did was, let's question everything.
Yeah.
Why do we have the system that we're using? We don't believe in God, I recommend that people read up on what critical theory really is, how it came about, and how it's going to affect your thinking. If, let's say, you have religious feelings, like whether you're a Christian, if you're Jewish, if you're a Muslim, it's going to adversely affect the way you think. It's going to adversely affect your children.
Yeah, I mean, because you question everything and you only find the negative in it. Therefore, you have to destroy it and start over.
Right.
And it is the communist method of the pursuit of perfection. Like, you're just looking for something that's perfect. And it's like there is no such thing as perfection. There is Jesus Christ and God, and that's it. Our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. Right. That's it. So this idea of perfection requires you to continue to start over and over and over again and question everything, destroy it at its roots. The critical theory has now taken on a different type of, aspect with the critical race theory. So everything is seen through the lens of race in a critical method. So everything that's been done is seen through the lens of race, especially even in moments where there's no race involved. And so that requires you to call everything racist or xenophobic or whatever. And okay, you got to crush that. You got to start over. And they tried that, and actually they're starting to try it again in the legal studies. It was called critical legal studies. And I was reading an article a while back. I think it was a Harvard or a Yale article, and he labeled it "The Question That Killed Critical Legal Studies." And the question was, well, what are you going to replace it with? And it's, how do you replace actual justice? And so you have to find something else. And then what you replace justice with is actually not justice, which is what you and I have talked about, which is social justice, which is not justice at all.
Right.
Right.
It's comeuppance. Really.
Yes.
It's retaliation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what you were just discussing right now, they like to discourage American exceptionalism,
right,
and replace it with Central European nihilism. And they've done this very quickly. Now, if you look, we're going to talk about Howard Zinn. Howard Zinn, that's one of the things that his weapons, because what he does is he questions how could America exist as a nation when the founder was, if you go back to Christopher Columbus, he came here strictly to enslave the Indians.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at, well, why are we looking at George Washington and Thomas Jefferson as the inspiration to this nation when they themselves were slave owners? We can't have a country founded on those three people, Columbus, Jefferson, and Washington. Therefore, we have to really question who we really are.
And what's interesting on that point about, no, the founding fathers, no good, all of this, no good. It's just like, but the Judeo-Christian values built upon the apostles and obviously Jesus Christ, well, that's no good either.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, you reach perfection, but no. That's no good. Judeo-Christian values are made fun of en masse, especially in academia and in Hollywood and in politics. Well, politics on the left. So it's becoming increasingly more so on the left. Not everyone, obviously, I don't want to just paint it with a broad brush, but not everyone in the Democrat Party does. Mm-hmm. But it's getting increasingly and rapidly increasingly to where Judeo-Christian values are just silly. They're unnecessary, and they're wrong. You
know what I find ironic is that in a country such as the United States, where the Christian church flourishes, there is freedom for everybody: Muslims, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists, even atheism, whatever. But in the communism, if you go to a communist country, all religion is suppressed. Yeah. There is no religion. You can't do it. So I find it ironic that a lot of people who espouse,
but at least it's not a theocracy.
Yep. So it's funny how a lot of the people on the left who like to sit and condemn the Christian church, but they'll speak highly of maybe some other religions. Yeah. If they get what they want, all religion is going to be suppressed, not just the Christian church. So anyway, yes. And,
so we wanted to touch on obviously the critical theory. Critical moved into critical legal studies, critical race theory. It's all effing screwed up.
Right.
You touch that stuff, you burn stuff down with it, and people need to understand that. It's idealism, but extremely dangerous idealism. And speaking of nihilism, sort of the Frankfurt School of nihilism, the nihilist of nihilists. Ooh, I can see me in the reflection. The nihilist of nihilists. Would you freaking stop? Idiot. Anyways, the nihilist of nihilists is Friedrich Nietzsche, who was question everything, get rid of everything. There is no such thing as morality. There is no such thing as truth. There is, and religion is a joke, and especially Christianity. It's just like, question everything, destroy everything. And yet at the same time, he would say in his, I think it's The Will to Power, pretty sure it's The Will to Power, where you're going to have to destroy Christianity, morality, religion, but you're going to more or less, you're going to have to put something in its place that has to look exactly like what we just tore down.
Right. Now, the nihilism and existentialism are two different things, but I think Nietzsche supported both of them.
You think who supported?
I believe Nietzsche supported both nihilism and existentialism.
Yeah.
Thank you. They're two different things. They're closely related, but they're not exactly the same. But Nietzsche was known to be kind of a supporter of both, from my understanding.
And wasn't Jean-Paul Sartre a big existentialist as well?
That I don't know, but he is one of the people that I'm going to mention later on. Remember this book here that I mentioned where he names names?
Yeah.
Sartre? Is it Jean-Paul Sartre?
I've always heard it as Sartre, but it's probably the American English way of saying it. So
let's have
laziness.
Let's have a fresh Sartre and begin again with the
what?
Sartre fresh.
No, that was trash.
Yeah,
that was worse than my. It was way worse than my joke about the Devil's Palace, Pleasure Palace. At least mine made sense. Mine at least had some type of correlation. Yours, you totally took a last name and tried to make it into a word. That wasn't actually the same.
I know.
All right, let's move on to communism in the West, how it moved off into the West.
All right. Now, you remember the Red Scare?
Oh, yeah, I do. I remember growing up being scared out of my mind.
You're being paranoid, right?
Yeah.
Wrong.
And they will still talk about that.
Yeah.
They will still say it was paranoia.
Right. Well, we've found out that that's not the case. And now, the Winona Project, ever heard of that?
I have.
Okay. Now, the Winona Project was a counterintelligence program that decrypted about 3,000 messages from the Soviet Union between 1943 and 1980. Now that it started with the OSS, which was the precursor to the CIA, the National Security Council, NSA or NSC or whatever it was, National Security Council, something like that. Whoever spies on us now is whoever's listening to us right now as we speak.
That's who you're talking about.
Yeah, maybe they can email me and let me know, is it NSA or NSC? Either way, but they were part of it. CIA was part of it, and found out about a lot of information. It's how we knew that Alger Hiss was a spy. It's how we knew that the Rosenbergs were spies. There was also was it anti-Semite?
You are.
I'm not in it.
Rosenbergs were. They were.
I'm an anti-dentite, not an anti-Semite. I'm Semitic, believe it or not. I'm Semitic. You know that? Yeah, I'm Semitic. I'm from the Middle East.
How could I not know that?
You should know that. Jews do not exclusively own that title.
Especially because you're right next to Israel.
Yeah.
You're right on top.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure my ancestor was the son of Noah, Shem, whatever his name was, which is where the word comes from, Semite.
Shem.
Not Shem.
Not Shemp. Yeah. And it's Shem, S-H-E-M, not S-H-I-M.
You had Japheth, Ham, and Shem, but that's where the Semite comes from. Anyway, okay, so now a lot of these cables were decrypted, or I should say declassified and published in 1995 after the Soviet Union fell, and it verified so many things, such as that the Rosenbergs and Alger Hiss were spies. It discovered there was something called the Cambridge Five, which was an espionage ring in the United Kingdom, and there were also Soviet spies within the Manhattan Project that gave the Soviets detailed information on the atomic bomb, which is why they were able to create one so quickly. Now, we'll bring up a little bit more about Alger Hiss in a second, because I want to mention a guy named Whittaker Chambers. Executive Order 983.
I want to add something real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
So there was a little video I was watching. It was called It's Done by the Cold War, which I think is done by the same. I want to say it's done by the same group who did the first the Great War, which did just a rundown of from 1914 to 1919, and I think that they did an actual 5-year thing on YouTube. Great job, right?
On what is it about?
The Great War, World War One.
Okay.
Now, I wasn't a big fan of the fact that they didn't use a lot of different sources. They used just a few of the main sources, a couple of primary sources, and I'm not a big fan of only sticking to one, especially if you're doing a multi-year project. But this guy was saying, and he sort of put it out there on the Cold War one regarding the Rosenbergs. He was quoting an operative, more or less, from the Soviet Union, not an operative, actually someone who worked within their Soviet Union Manhattan Project type of thing. And he's like, oh, we didn't get, their information was not even helpful. We would have taken care of this. We would have made the atomic bomb regardless in this time frame. So we didn't even really use their stuff. And he was saying it and quoting it as if that was a counterpoint. And I'm like, really? So we're believing.
Yeah. So why did they have spies? Why did they have spies within the
exactly? Yeah, it's unbelievable. Just to show that you can have spies there. Like, come on, unbelievable. So, but that's the source of information we're believing nowadays. Believe the Soviets and now let's believe the Communist Party of China. Go ahead.
All right. Well, we were so infested with so many spies that Truman signed Executive Order 9835. It's known as Truman's Loyalty Order, which is really, loyalty oath. And it was meant to, get them out in the open. You had to, I'm going to give you an example who we had in the government. Now, I mentioned Alger Hiss, Soviet spy. Now, there was another communist named Whittaker Chambers who, I guess he got disillusioned, and he was stating that, Alger Hiss, he's a Soviet spy. Now, of course, the media, a lot of people on the left, defending Alger Hiss. They defended him all the way to the end. It wasn't until the Winona papers were declassified before finally people shut up and quit defending him. Now, he'll still have his defenders like Howard Zinn, who will say, okay, so men like Alger Hiss and the Rosenbergs gave the Soviets all this information, such as the atomic bomb. Is it fair that only the United States has the atomic bomb? That's how they can kind of justify it. Is it only, shouldn't the Red Chinese have it too?
I think that's a great line of thinking.
Yeah, that's how they were able to justify it. You had Whittaker Chambers. There was something called the Pumpkin Papers or something like that. It's a famous episode regarding Whittaker Chambers. Yeah. Read up on Whittaker Chambers. Good person. Now, Henry Wallace. Henry Wallace was the vice president under Franklin Delano Roosevelt from 1941 to 45.
Good man.
He had he was practically a communist himself. Mm-hmm. He had a lot of communist ideals. I don't think he was a member of the Communist Party, but he might as well should have been. Now, the Democrats knew that FDR was not going to survive his fourth term. Mm-hmm. So they replaced Henry Wallace with Harry S. Truman.
Dude, that was cutting it. That was cutting it really freaking close.
Yeah.
Because he died right after his fourth term started.
Yeah, he did. He took the oath. Ironically, FDR, I believe, was the one, because the president used to take the oath of office in April, was it not? Was it March or April? Before one of the amendments was written. March or April was when the president would take the oath of office. Mm-hmm. FDR moved it up to January 20th. But in April was when FDR died, his first year in his fourth term. Harry Truman took over. So that was cutting it close. Now, he ran against Harry Truman in 1948, the Progressive Party. Now, he along with Strom Thurmond, the Dixiecrats, and those three were the Democrats, and then you had Thomas Dewey, who was the lone person on the right. That's why they thought Dewey would win, because you've got three people on the left: Truman, Wallace, and Strom Thurmond, and then you had Thomas Dewey on the right.
And according to the press, Dewey did win.
Dewey defeated Truman. But no, somehow Truman pulled it off and he won.
Yeah.
So, okay. So Henry Wallace almost became the president of the United States. Now, there was a guy by the name of Owen Lattimore. He wrote a lot of books. He knew his stuff on China, Mongolia, stuff like that. But unfortunately, he was a huge communist sympathizer. Loved the Soviets, loved Mao. Now, when George C. Marshall was trying to work with Chiang Kai-shek after World War II was over. Owen Lattimore advised George C. Marshall to tell Chiang Kai-shek, who was on the verge of defeating Maoist's army, to stand down, which he did.
Unfreaking believable.
Chiang Kai-shek could have annihilated the communists.
Mm-hmm.
Nope, didn't happen.
Now, was that before or after the Long March?
The Long March was before World War II.
Okay.
That was back in the 30s. So,
okay.
Yeah, Owen Lattimore, very influential in just, abandoning Chiang Kai-shek. I mean, when we see stuff like this a lot where we abandon somebody, all right, let the communists take it. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, Truman had the Truman Doctrine to protect Greece and Turkey, which people like Alger Hiss, Henry Wallersley objected to that. Fortunately, I'm glad Truman did that. Mm-hmm. Because that could have led to the domino theory, Greece and Turkey falling, and then India and Iran, which is something that was even mentioned. And, in fact, the Soviets occupied half of Iran during World War II, and they wouldn't leave until Truman threatened them. And I read somewhere that he threatened to drop a nuke on them if they didn't get out of Iran. Britain got out, but the Soviets did not. So
you're like, hey, I already dropped 2.
Yeah. So, okay, now let's take a look at people who we have today. Howard Zinn. Howard Zinn is the big guy. He's the guy. He wrote A People's History of the United States. He formed the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. John Lewis, the congressman who recently passed.
The late John Lewis.
He was a member. The SNCC.
Yep, the man who's if you went to his funeral, that was the one place where COVID-19 did not exist.
That's correct.
I love that.
Very Marxist. Zinn formed that group when he was at Spelman College. He formed that group because Spelman was a black college to teach girls how to become ladies.
Right.
He went in there saying, you know what? No. You need to become not violent. You need to become activists.
Right.
Why are you listening to the patriarchy? You need to patriarchy keyword. Yeah. Why are you listening to that? You need to become an activist and foment some sort of a Marxist revolution. Mm-hmm. He influenced the kids at Spelman College. But yeah, John Lewis was a member, a founding member of SNCC.
And I like people need to pay attention to the names of these committees, these coalitions, these activist groups. Mm-hmm. It's in name only.
Yeah.
Everything else is pretty much sinister about those types of groups.
Yeah.
Like activist groups. And I'm talking about on the left and the right. I'll just be honest with you. I don't like activism. I don't like activism of any kind. I like just live your life. And unfortunately, we live in a time where you just you almost have to be involved. And I hate that. But I'm not a fan of any activist group. I feel very uncomfortable whenever left or right, they just start talking all this. I'm like, you're losing me because you're too in it. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's just me.
Well, one of the things that groups like the SNCC, Howard Zinn, let's talk about Howard Zinn mostly. Howard Zinn follows the communist model. Saul Alinsky, lie, deny, deception. Here's why. You tell people a false history. You tell them a false narrative. Because the people that you're talking to, chances are they don't know the real history.
Correct.
And no one's going to call them out.
Right.
Okay. Now those
you're an authority. You're an authority figure.
Right.
So you're not gonna question it. And I've told parents that if your child is being told by their teacher, who according to them, that's the authority when it comes to education. They're the ones who are supposed to know what they're talking about. So when the parent confronts those teachings, those lessons, and says, no, that's not right. Well, you're just a, small business owner, or you're an electrician, or you're whatever. You don't know what you're talking about. From your child's perspective, like, you don't know what you're talking about. My teacher, education, they know what they're talking about. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
Not a lot of that going on as far as.
Well, they have their, here's the thing is that media accomplices are going to quickly defend people like Howard Zinn. They like to use the word debunk. I hear that so often. I was, was it New York Times released like a list of names of people who died from COVID? And within that group of names are people who were killed in falling accidents, people who were shot to death. Well, when you talk about that, the first thing I hear from the people are some of my little lefty friends will go like, "Oh, I heard that was debunked. I've gotten a couple of articles that was debunked."
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a media accomplice who sits there and say, "Oh, this never happened. This is not true." That's part of the deceptive campaign that these groups use.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I'll give you another example. Method. Right. It is a Soviet method. Give you an example. Dr. Mary Grabar was talking about this in her book, Debunking Howard Zinn, where the communists were competing with the NAACP in defending blacks. Blacks would be falsely accused of, black white women, something like that. And, the NAACP will go in there and do what they can to defend the black men who are falsely accused, or the black men who are falsely accused of causing a riot. The communists would go in there and would quickly set up shop and tell the judge, we have been called in to support these students, when the students nor their parents never asked for their help. And they would push the NAACP out. They would make sure that NAACP has no say in the defense. And then the communists will turn around and say, well, the NAACP didn't even try to help these kids. We're the ones who are trying to help. So they're not only creating a scenario where they're pushing the NAACP out, but then they're saying, well, the NAACP didn't even offer to help.
Yeah. And their websites, like these Communist Party USA and different Socialist Workers Party, they will really champion. We were there helping during the civil rights movement. Like, no, you're grandstanding and you were trying to, it was a recruiting.
Right.
You were recruiting. You weren't working for freedom of people. You were just recruiting for the party.
Yeah. They were working against the NAACP. So, so that's part of the deceptive campaign. And you can see that right now. I'm going to get a little political here. Surprise, surprise. Like with what went on with the COVID response at the beginning, where President Trump put a ban on travel from China in place. And for 2 months, people like Pelosi and the New York Health,
Schumer
and de Blasio and people, some of the people at the health department in New York were saying, go to the China, there was some sort of a Chinatown parade. Yeah. And this was long after Trump put the whole policy in place, and then he tried to stop travel in Europe. They will turn around and say, during the campaign, oh, Trump did nothing. Trump didn't take this seriously. And no one's calling them out. And that's the type of deceptive campaign I'm talking about. I mean, certain things were put in place to protect us from COVID. But we're now being told by the very people who said, oh, that's all xenophobia, are now turning around saying, oh, we were the ones that were trying to warn the people. The president didn't take it seriously.
Yeah. They didn't even listen.
Yeah.
They keep like, I think a janitor walked by and said something to the president, and the president did not take his advice. And it's something as stupid as that. It's like,
and they're going to write now, and they fooled a lot of people. Now, imagine when they write the history books, what they're going to say. And, those
absolutely.
And those history books are going to be read.
It's the same thing with what they did to Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill. I grew up having a negative view of Clarence Thomas. growing up. And
Right.
guess what? Kids are going to have a very negative view of Brett Kavanaugh growing up.
Right.
I saw it's probably about a month ago, I ran across an article. I was doing some research, and it was a CNBC article. And in there, just randomly put in there, Brett Kavanaugh, who was, hit with all of these sexual allegations. And I'm like, that is exactly what they're going to put in the history books. Just a little subtle, oh, by the way, he was, but they won't give any clarification. No.
And Hunter, people like Hunter Biden, you saw how they suppressed that information, and now it's finally coming out after the election. But this is what I'm talking about, where you're willing accomplices, they will suppress. Mm-hmm. They'll suppress information. The Twitter, Facebook, I should call it. It's how they suppressed that information. They would not even allow the New York Post to say anything about Hunter Biden.
Yeah, they shut them out. They locked them out of their own Twitter account for 2 weeks.
Yeah, they're like, oh well, we all right.
It's happening here. All right. So
Noam Chomsky is another person.
He's the best.
Yeah, Noam Chomsky, Saul Alinsky, these are all heroes of the left. Mm-hmm. Saul Alinsky wrote a book called Rules for Radicals. I have a copy of it. Read it, because that's the playbook that they were using.
Correct.
Okay. Now, George Orwell, he wrote 1984. George Orwell was smart. He wrote 2 very good books, 1984 and Animal Farm. And he reached out to a lot of people. I kind of think that's how that's kind of how you're going to have to kind of play the game. Everybody thinks 1984 is about Big Brother watching you. No, that's not what 1984 is about. Big Brother to watch you is just a method of attaining what they're trying to do, which you'll read. It's like in the very last paragraph, the very last sentence is what 1984 is about. Mm-hmm. Just read the book. I'm not going to say what it is. But I think that's going to be the method of how you have to reach out to kids nowadays. All right. Now, during the Red Scare, you had Senator Joseph McCarthy, and you had the House Un-American Activities Committee. A lot of people sit there and they blame McCarthy on HUAC. Well, HUAC was the House. McCarthy was in the Senate. So if you hear idiots sit there and say, oh, McCarthy and no, McCarthy had nothing to do with HUAC. Mm-hmm. HUAC was started really by a Democrat, a guy named Martin Dees, or Dies, but I think it's Martin Dees. Spelled like Dies.
I think he also, I think he came from the, didn't he come from the Dees family that,
I'm sure,
that produced nuts?
I was going to say something about batteries die hard, but all right, that's funnier.
Finally got one.
All right. You won that one. You won that one, man.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, Dees was from Texas, born and died. He died in Lufkin, 7. So
Lufkin,
yeah,
hey, that's where a bunch of my family is from.
Lufkin.
So, yeah. Okay. No, they're up in that area.
Well, so now the HUAC went against, they exposed much of what was known as the Hollywood 10. Mm-hmm. There was the blacklisting. Now there were groups that fought against HUAC. Humphrey Bogart comes to mind. Katharine Hepburn, people like that. Now there were people who supported HUAC exposing the communists within the left, the communists within Hollywood. Let's see, Ronald Reagan comes to mind, Walt Disney, those guys, like the people, the big guys, Mayer, the guys in MGM, those guys, Warner, those guys were in support of exposing the communists that were within Hollywood. And it did come. There was a blacklist that came out, and your people like Danny Kaye and Humphrey Bogart were sitting there defending the Hollywood blacklist, the people who were blacklisted. In fact, I heard, was it you're a fan of Elia Kazar? What's that director who did On the Waterfront? You know what I'm talking about?
Who did On the Waterfront?
Yeah, wasn't there that director, Elia Kazar? I think that's the name.
I don't know. I can't remember.
Elia Kazar.
Okay, yeah, I wouldn't have been able to guess that. I don't even know who that is. But I do love that movie.
Yeah, well, he was the Hollywood liberal left. They did not like him, not at all.
Really?
Yeah. So now
probably because he made On the Waterfront.
Elia Kazan,
and he was against the unions. He's like, let a man work.
Yeah, Elia Kazan. I remember when they gave him.
How many times are you going to say the same freaking name?
Because I kept calling him Kazar. Elia Kazan.
Okay, all right. Well, get it.
All right.
You got it.
Well, okay. Anyway, so
Kazam.
those whatever. Shazam. All right. Now, I'm going to give you some example of some people who supported communism. Now, there was a famous guy by the name of Paul Robeson. He was famous then. He's not famous now.
Yeah.
But Paul Robeson was one of the supporters of communism. Here's the name. Ever heard of Charlie Chaplin?
No.
Are you joking?
Yes.
Okay. Charlie Chaplin, communist,
yes,
or communist sympathizer.
Yeah, definitely a communist sympathizer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sterling Hayden. You ever heard of him? You know who that guy is?
I did look him up.
Okay. Yep. Played General Jack D. Ripper in Dr. Strangelove, and he was also Captain McCluskey in Godfather. He's the one that was having dinner with Michael. He was the protector of that. Was it Sollozzo or whoever that one guy was? And then Michael Corleone came out of the bathroom with a handgun at dinner.
Is this Godfather 2?
No, Godfather 1. It was right before.
Okay. Oh,
remember that?
No.
He was the old captain.
What scene was this?
This is the scene where Michael Corleone blew away the police captain. He was the police captain.
I'm trying to remember that scene. It's been a while since I've seen.
He was having dinner. Goes to the bathroom. Comes back. He has the gun. The gun was in the toilet. Comes back. Shoots.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's Sterling Hayden. Sterling Hayden was a member of the Communist Party at one point. Now
at one point he got out pretty quick.
He got out, but then he regretted it. He was upset, and then he fell back into it. So he was upset that he had to speak out against the communists. So anyway, okay. So now I mentioned this book here, Roger Scruton. He asks, why is it that the authorities studied in the humanities departments were all politically on the left? And he names a lot of names. One of them is the guy Jean-Paul Sartre, but he mentions several names. Now, I was not familiar with all of them. I was familiar with the first guy, Eric Hobsbawm, because I saw, I'm a big fan of the Folio Society books, and they did like a 4-volume series on some of his history. So Eric Hobsbawm, Ralph Miliband, E.P. Thompson, Jean-Paul Sartre, Michel Foucault. Is that how you say it? Foucault? Gilles Deleuze.
I think
Theodore.
Foucault. Huh? Theodore Adorno.
Georgi Lukács. Jürgen Habermas. Antonio Gramsci. Alain Badiou, and Slavoj Žižek. Žižek.
I love that guy.
So he says those are like some of the people that the humanities department just in love with.
Have you ever watched Slavoj speak? Any of his Like he speaks everywhere.
Is Isaac guy?
Yeah.
No.
Have you ever watched him?
No.
You have got to watch. One, I do enjoy his talks. It's not that I agree with everything that he says, but there's a number of things that I agree with what he says. He claims, here's what's strange, is that he claims to be a Marxist, not a Marxist. He claims to be a communist. And he was speaking at, I think it was either it was a college or a libertarian institute or something along those lines, but it was a libertarian group, right? And the guy was like, when he was talking, he goes, "You don't sound like a communist." And he's like, "I think that you are a libertarian." It was a big joke or whatever. But it is, yeah. I mean, he's very interesting, and he's constantly rubbing his nose. He's very strange, very strange.
Noam Chomsky considers himself a socialist libertarian.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I mean, libertarian's a big umbrella. I consider myself a conservative libertarian.
It is extremely, and I think people need to be careful of that. Like, as I run into people who say, "Oh, I vote for libertarians," different stuff like that, and I think that's fine and that's good. We've had libertarians on the show. One of them would be Connor Boyack. He's been on the show. I'm a big fan of Milton Friedman, guys like that. I'm a big fan of Dr. Richard Epstein. But
was he the one who killed himself?
No, Richard Epstein did not kill himself. He was murdered. But it is like you said, it is a large umbrella that is getting too large to where it's like, now you're encompassing conservatives and liberals. Like, no. You got to figure it out what you are. You just can't say I'm a libertarian, because I was wanting to vote for some libertarians this past election. And I went and looked at the people on the list who were libertarian. I was like, dude, you're freaking further left than the Democrats who are running. So you got to be really careful. Just because they have an L on their name does not mean they're actually a libertarian.
Yeah, I mean, Bill Maher, he's a libertarian, or so he says. And, I mean, there are some things that I agree with him on, such as free speech, but much of the other stuff that he espouses, I don't support. And I mean, God bless him, or
and look,
whatever.
Bill Maher, I like a lot of the things that he says, and like I said, the Slavoj Žižek, I like a lot of the things that he says, but you're not going to agree with everything. Even Jordan Peterson, who's one of my personal heroes nowadays, I don't agree with everything that he says.
Oh, I bought his book. I bought his book based on your suggestion. I sat and I listened to him on YouTube. I really like what he has to say. But I saw your suggestion, and I got his 14 points, 12.
No, that's Woodrow Wilson's book.
That's true. Okay, not a big fan of him.
No,
he's a bit of a racist.
Bit of a racist, Wilson. But the 14 points, I think he was onto something.
12, the 12 things to make your life better, or whatever it is.
Yeah, 12 rules for life. All right, let's move on. All right, we got through your
list. Okay,
Hollywood 12.
Right, now let's talk about BLM and Antifa. Just touch on them. Both of them communist. The BLM organization started by 3 communists.
Marxists.
Communists. Yes.
Trained Marxists.
Trained Marxists. Antifa. Boy, they love to carry around that hammer and sickle.
Mm-hmm.
So, but hey, they're just an idea. They're just an idea.
They're just an idea. Yeah. They're gonna carry around that hammer and sickle, but by God, they're not gonna do any work.
All right. Now, Barack Hussein Obama.
So you're not gonna laugh at that joke? All right.
Yeah. It's the D's nuts. That was, you can't get any better than that.
Well, I'm not trying to top myself.
You've raised the bar up here on these nuts. Now all your other jokes are down here. So you're gonna have to come up with something better.
Yeah.
That's gonna be hard. This is why you tell the best joke at the end and then you leave the room.
Well, you set me up, man. You put it on a tee.
George Costanza, that's something that he espoused that when you have on a high note, you better leave.
You gotta leave. You gotta go. Leave.
All right. Let's talk about Barack Hussein Obama.
Yeah. Could you
Moderate.
stop clapping? Stop clapping your hands.
Okay. Moderate, correct?
Extremely moderate.
Yeah. All right.
Gonna fundamentally change America. I'm a moderate.
Raised by communists. Yes, his Kenyan father was a communist who met his mother, who was a radical leftist, in a Russian language class. Now, Stanley Dunham, who was his white grandfather, chose a notorious. I'm reading off this. Chose a notorious member of the Communist Party to be Obama's mentor. His name was Frank Marshall Davis. Now, Obama wrote in his memoir that in college he also sought out Marxist professors. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, Frank Marshall Davis was a huge impact on Obama. But it doesn't end there. Obama's CIA director, John Brennan, he voted for the communists. Now, he wasn't an official member of the Communist Party, but he did vote for the communists. Mm-hmm. Now, James Comey, was he a communist?
James Comey, yeah, that was revealed too, that he voted communist. He said that he voted for Reagan after he left the Communist Party. And he's like, now I don't know what you could call me politically.
So we had, under Obama, we had the CIA.
How about a sorry, no good piece of crap? Like a second version of J. Edgar Hoover. How about that?
Yeah. Yeah. So under Obama, the CIA director was once a communist, and the FBI director was once a communist.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. You know who else was a communist? Or at least was involved in that? Sorry, I know.
Quit freaking clapping your hands.
Damn it. I'm trying to...
Damn it, Jim.
All right. David Axelrod. Yeah, damn it, Jim. I'm a clapper, not a communist. David Axelrod. David Axelrod, the chief strategist for Obama's presidential campaigns and a senior advisor in the White House. His mother worked for a communist newspaper. His father, according to Axelrod in his memoir, listed his party affiliation as a communist. Axelrod got his start in Chicago politics through working for a hardline Stalinist Soviet agents Harry and David Cantor. You know who else were communists? Wasn't Bill Ayers and his girlfriend, whatever that, weren't they communists? I believe
Bill
they were.
Ayers? I don't
Was
know.
it Ayers? Whatever that Ayers guy.
But here's something also interesting. Thomas Sowell started out as a Marxist.
So did David Horowitz.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know Thomas Sowell.
There's a few prominent conservatives who started out as it is the disillusionment. You know, you finally become disillusioned. You're like, man, this ain't what it's all about. So it is interesting. It really does depend on, it's I guess you could use the line, not how you start, it's how you finish, right? So there's a lot of people when they are young, they're so impressionable, and that's what communism goes after. They go after the young students. That's what Howard Zinn wanted to do. Is like, I need to go after the students.
But here's the thing: Thomas Sowell and David Horowitz, they now lash out against communism.
Oh yeah, no, I get it. No, and that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
you can see the fruit from these trees.
Right.
And you can see if there's like still communism connected to some of these fruit trees.
Right. All right. Valerie Jarrett, senior advisor. Her late father, James Bowman, was involved with communist front groups and was in contact with a paid Soviet agent in the 50s who was wanted for espionage. Her maternal grandfather, Robert Rochon Taylor, I wonder if that's the actor, was investigated by the FBI for his membership in communist groups and his business relationship with the same Soviet agent. Her late father-in-law, Vernon Jarrett, was assigned by the Communist Party USA to a special cultural arts cell, flagged by the FBI as an internal security risk, swiftly arrested in the event of he was to be swiftly arrested in the event of a war with the Soviet Union. FBI also investigated his wife, Bernetta Fern Jarrett, for communist activities. Susan Rice, Obama's national security advisor. That's the one that told us that deserter served with distinction, and also said that the attacks in Benghazi were based on a video, not just, it was a protest, not a terrorist attack.
Right.
She was involved in the Russia collusion hoax against President Trump and wrote a 426-page dissertation praising as a model and a masterpiece in the evolution of international peacekeeping the political ascendancy of Zimbabwe's Marxist dictator Robert Mugabe. In her dissertation, Rice lauded Mugabe as a pragmatic, intelligent, sensible, gentle, balanced man who possessed considerable patience and restraint. Yeah,
the World Health Organization actually appointed Robert Mugabe as its global ambassador.
Yeah,
until everyone flipped out and was like, "Are you the stupidest freak on earth? Like, this guy is an absolute terror to his own people."
Yep.
Well, it also goes to show you where the World Health Organization leans.
And the Obama
it's such a joke, man. How people just they don't see what the hell's going on.
No, they don't. Because, what's that saying that one of the devil's greatest tricks is convincing people he doesn't exist?
Yeah.
Right. Well,
that's
the communists, the greatest trick that they're doing right now is their deception. Hey, we're not a threat.
Yeah.
Communism ended in 91 when the Soviet Union fell. We're not done. Frank Marshall Davis, I mentioned him, pro-Soviet, pro-Red China communist. Biggest influence on Obama's Black identity from age 10 through his college years. He was a card-carrying member of the Communist Party. His number, according to the FBI, 47544.
Look it up.
Yep. Reverend Jeremiah Wright.
Love Obama's that guy.
Pastor, personal hero and mentor, was an avowed Marxist.
I got his sermons on DVD.
Do you? I felt uplifted by his speeches. I really did.
Oh, absolutely.
I listened to them for 20 years, but I don't recall him ever saying anything negative about the United States. Do you?
No, nothing. Big fan of George Washington.
His church congregants had to sign a pledge to support redistribution of wealth and reject middle classness. Interesting. David Marinus, Washington Post.
Also known as the bourgeoisie.
Yes. Yeah. David Marinus, Washington Post journalist, chosen to write Obama's biography, which covered up his radical past. His father was a member of the Communist Party and worked through a cell in Detroit to secretly influence workers through his articles for the Detroit Times. Now we have it looks like, now granted the electors have not voted, but it looks like Obama's successor is about to take the oath of office with the most radical left-wing senator to the left of Bernie Sanders is about to be the vice president. If that's even
possible,
is about to become vice president, and she is one fragile, weak heartbeat away from being president of the United States.
She is one German Shepherd away from becoming president.
So that's where we are.
Yeah.
And so now to answer that question, did we win the Cold War? No. In fact, we are losing bad. And unless things change, we will be drinking Victory vodka. And we probably won't even have this show. We'll have to be called the Comrades of History.
That's true.
Yeah. So.
And people may think, wait a minute, the wall fell in 89, Soviet fell in 91. What are you talking about? Of course we won. It's like, no. Communism is about infiltration. It's about subversion. It's about overtaking from the inside. And it's utilizing all of the methods, which would be getting into academia, absolute success, getting into politics,
entertainment,
success, getting into entertainment, absolute success. And now you've gotten into big business where, the communications, absolute success. Like
not only
the media.
Well, not only you're talking about Facebook, Twitter, Google, where stories trending, but also Fox News now is no longer a conservative. It's not a place for you to hear the other side. They're going to start, following the way the New York Times, ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, MSNBC, they're going to go the same way. Yeah. All the guys that were of the conservative leaning are gone.
And people will call you out on that and be like, "Oh my God, Alan, don't overreact." No. Here's how this works and how it has worked for all of the other outlets, just in case you haven't really been paying attention. It's slow. You take one out, you take two out, you replace a third one. Then you slowly but surely, you're like, oh, well, that's a left-leaning media outlet. Well, now it is, but it wasn't before. Well, what's happening on Fox, which was a conservative news outlet, you see dropping 1, 2, 3, and eventually, and however many years it may take a year, may take 5 years, you'll be saying, "Oh, that's a left-leaning media outlet." It's just the way it trends.
What is it? Nowadays, kids coming out of school, I believe 60% have a favorable opinion to socialism. They did their job.
Yeah, they did.
They did their job.
A fantastic job. I probably have more friends that, to an extent, despise American history and the founding fathers than don't. Or at least they have more bad to say than good. Or they don't know really anything at all except, well, they were slave owners.
Yeah.
That's disturbing.
Yeah.
They have, and that's one of the ideas is you have to destroy a nation's history. And Marxist wrote that in his book, Communist Manifesto. The present dominates the past, not the past dominates the present.
Howard Zinn has nothing good to say about any of our founders. None. Nothing. The 1619 Project. I'm glad Dr. Graybar is going to write a book. There's another book that I had just purchased, which she endorsed. I don't remember the name of it, but it's been out and it defends the 1619 Project. I'm sorry, it speaks out against the 1619 Project. And I know Dr. Graybar. Dr. Graybar, I can tell you the name of the book here in 1 second. It's called 1620: A Critical Response to the 1619 Project by Peter Wood.
Okay. Yeah, because there's been a couple of pieces come out refuting the 1619 Project, and that's the thing is, dude, you gotta not be afraid to refute it.
Right.
And if you don't know, or maybe you view history in the viewpoint of negativity, like American history in the viewpoint of negativity, and only negativity. Well, you may need to question that, because this country was built on good ideas. It does not mean that we did everything right or perfect. No, I'm Obviously not. And I hate having to like correct or preface with that, because people will, if you say America was built on good Christian principles. Oh yeah, well, you're forgetting. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not forgetting. So enough, enough. Like we get it. We can combine all of it and say, this is the history of this country. And let's take the good, remember the good and the bad. Don't replicate the bad. Replicate the good.
Right.
Continue the good. And don't be an a-hole.
Right.
And only bring up the bad.
Right. Well, it's based on the ideals. That's what our country is based on, not on the lives of Washington or, I mean, the
and
only
that's
person.
Why we say that America is an idea. It is a continuance of an idea of the promise of freedom, the promise of personal freedom.
Right.
So let's go and end the show, brother, because we could be talking all night.
Yeah.
So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, as we always do, we like to end on a scripture, and we've been giving out names. We've been naming names from history on up to the present. Boy, I'm sure some of your buddies are going to like your ending on the Obama administration. So, all right, 1 Thessalonians 5:12 says this, and we urge you, brethren, to recognize those who labor among you and are over you in the Lord and admonish you. And correct you. So yeah, we need to know those who labor among us, who work beside us. And we're not going on the scale of someone like an AOC who's, advocating for getting a list of names together. We're talking about people who labor among you and who may think completely different from you. And don't be afraid of having those conversations. And don't be afraid of saying, hey, you're wrong. Or saying, hey, you're right. Now sometimes that's hard to do. But sometimes somebody's just right.
Right.
So, all right, Alan, where can people find us?
They can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. You, my friend, have your Thursday night live chats. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to get my Tuesday night history restarted again. Been brutally beaten at work, 12-hour days.
12-hour days, 12-hour days, literally, man.
Like last Friday,
I don't envy you.
I worked 12 and a half hours. I did take half-hour lunch. So, but yeah, I came home. I couldn't even work out. I was just complete. I sat on the couch and I just stared at the TV. Watched Tombstone.
There you
Loved
go.
it. Great movie. So,
yeah, one of my favorites.
Yeah, but once things slow down a bit at work, I'm trying to get back up. I might do a Tuesday. If I have the energy, I'll try to do a Tuesday night history, and talk about Tombstone. What happened in Tombstone? I think it's a pretty interesting story.
There you go.
So I'll see if I have the energy. But you've got your Thursday night live chats on Instagram, 9 p.m. Central, and so. I don't know what are you planning on talking about, or have you got it set?
What am I going to talk about this week? I don't know.
Okay. Now we are looking at also me, you, and Jared doing a little road trip and filming around Texas, where the Texas Revolution took place. I don't know when we're going to release that.
Yeah. So if that happens, I'll be doing the live show on Thursday night with y'all.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be releasing anything on the Texas Revolution until, February, March, April.
Right.
But we're going to start taping, so that'll be fun.
Yep, will be. All right, ladies and gentlemen.
Wait, hold on. I forgot.
You're really irritating me this show.
I forgot. We have our own website, www.thesonsofhistory.com. Take it away.
Thanks. Thank you. What a friend. All right. Now that brings our show to an end, but if you haven't yet, go subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are really moving up, and we will soon be able to live stream on YouTube, so that'll be great. I know we haven't been pushing that as hard as we need to. And also, if you haven't, I was going to say like and subscribe, but no, that would be wrong. Leave a rating and review here on this podcast, whatever you're listening to. That does us a huge fave.
Yep.
All right. Are you done, sir?
Yeah. I'm done.
Okay. Beautiful. All right, man. Well, I hope you have a great week, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we will chat with you later.